In this video, something's missing. Hold on, wait a minute. And that's the new UniFi PowerAmp. It's a premium speaker amplifier. More on that in a second, but first, welcome to the channel. My name is Bogdan Shperny, founder of Apex One IT, and we do small business IT. Now, I'm no audiophile, but I do run the soundboard in my church, so I know a little bit about live sound, speakers, monitors, that kind of thing. And today, I'll walk you through setting up your first speaker amplifier, and specifically, we'll be using the new UniFi PowerAmp. We'll look at this amp itself, how to add a pair of speakers to it, like the wire, we'll talk a little bit about that, and also how to use the UniFi Play app that's a companion to the physical speaker amplifier. And finally, I'll give you a couple examples of where this can work for your use case. This is the black version I have, also comes in white, so PowerAmp, quite heavy for sure. And it has this magnetic opening. You almost don't want to throw away this box, such a nice box. It has this installation guide, also on a kind of felt soft kind of a card here, interesting. And here's the unit itself. Comes in at about 5 pounds, and the dimensions here, so it's 2.5 inches tall, 8.5, so from my hand, 8.5 inches across, and 9.3 from the back to the front. And this whole bottom part here is actually not just little feet, but the whole thing is like a soft pad. And right in the middle, that's the little port for resetting the entire unit. Then if we look at the back side, so this is all your kind of ports that are covered up. First, the inputs, they're kind of all over the place, I would say. We have the eARC HDMI, kind of for your TV. Then you have audio in, right, and left. So these are RCA connectors here that you can use. And there's various adapters, you know, from like your standard 3.5 millimeter to your kind of red and white RCA connectors. So those are your only physical inputs here. Then you have your outputs. So first for your sub, then your one channel, which is also right, and another channel left. That's for your power, and then there's kind of a, you can say a 1 gigabit built-in port really. So that's your daisy chain, we'll talk about a little later. Okay, and then the rest, we have the power cable. Kind of like, sort of looks like, feels like actually the Apple TV one, this kind of style. And then some technical stuff there, and then these kind of banana plug adapters. Okay, so this part's important. Just to show you that a little closer. So the red kind of dot matches up there. And that's where your speaker wire will go. And the amp itself, in terms of the power, it can do 130 watts for 8 ohm speakers. And we'll talk about that in a minute here. Or if you have 4 ohm impedance speakers, it can do 260 watts. Now for the physical setup, I already plugged in the power. That's all I did. And you'll see it'll take like a minute or two probably to power up here. And once it's done, it's going to show you that screen there for you, prompts you to download the app. Okay, so it's the UniFi Play app. And I have it here on my phone. So let's go ahead and check that out. So via Bluetooth, so you just need to be nearby, it's going to prompt you to set up that power amp. So just click setup. Now I should tell you that you could use the Ethernet ports in the back, but that's optional. It'll connect to Wi-Fi and we'll get it going from there. So right away, we can edit this device name. Say this for the lobby. Now it's asking about the Wi-Fi password. So whatever Wi-Fi your phone's connected to here is the one that is going to want to connect to. So if you want to connect to a different network, like different VLAN, things like that, make sure you first switch your phone over and then come back here and type in that password for that Wi-Fi network. And it does accept not just 2.4, but also the 5 gigahertz. And just click next. Okay, and now it's sending that configuration to the amp itself. And it says setup is done. If you had an update, it might prompt you for an update, and it's done. Here's the volume control in the app. Next, let's go ahead and hook up, and I'll show you how, a couple speakers. Okay, now back in the app, we have our 1 amp. If we had more, that's what it will be. The green shows this online. We're connected to it. Now, if we, obviously we can see that we can control the volume here right away. If we need to. If there was something playing, it would show there. Right now it says not playing, but let's tap into it. So it gives us an IP address. Let's say we want to, you can rename this, say studio shelves or just studio. Now we can control the volume. So if you just, you can just slide this obviously. And remember, we don't want to kind of overdrive and ruin our speakers. So tap on that little icon on the top right. And you can see here, we can set the volume limit. So this is basically going to reduce the power output of the PowerAmp. And just like I said, to make sure it's safe, not just for listening, but also for your equipment. So for example, one thing you should know that, let's say, you'll see sometimes I found my testing even 50%. So I'm reducing this guy down to, I guess ultimately, I'm not sure exactly, but I guess 50 watts at an 8 ohm per channel. Channel is kind of, each one of those banana plugs is a channel, okay? So your left and right, 50%. And now this device volume, so at 100%, it's actually at 50% of the total power, okay? That's the way it works, if that makes sense. You kind of just reduce your window spectrum of how much you can adjust it. So your device volume actually has more sort of fidelity control now. So let's turn that down. Next, we have audio source. So this shows you and actually gives you a kind of nice graphic of where to connect to, just like we did. So for streaming, all you need is obviously speakers, and you can even just have one channel output if you need to. HDMI and line in. Let's say we're actually playing something. You can open your control center on your iPhone. For example, this through AirPlay streaming. Actually, it looks like I was already streaming elsewhere. So system capture, yeah, it's going right now somewhere else. But if I wasn't recording, you could see there, you'll see the name studio. So let me stream from my iPad. Okay, you probably hear that. So as you can see, I'm adjusting volume on the PowerAmp, and it's actually also adjusting in the app. I can adjust it here. I can adjust it on my iPad that's streaming, and that's also going to adjust the volume. And obviously pause even here. Okay, so that's kind of control. I can skip to the next song. If this was playing now, it's showing you also on that screen what was recently playing, right? Okay, then if we keep going down, so this is kind of an equalizer it has built into here. So first of all, you can turn this off if you want. You see, it kind of explains to you, I won't be redundant here. But like if you set this up for music, just set it to music, watching a movie. If you hooked it up to your TV, for example, a movie, right, night, so it kind of lowers, this is just an equalizer. So for example, you can do it custom, right? This is your low end. These three down here, that's usually kind of like your subwoofer would be in control of that. And then your high end here. And as you can see for night, it lowers the high end and the low end in music, or you can also just turn it off. And dynamic boost basically gives you a boost, I'm sure. Or you can turn it off. Actually, just like it says here, disabling might improve control response latency, meaning it's gonna work a little faster from the time, you control things. But we can leave it on, that's fine. Let's go to music mode. If you set this up for a studio or like home theater or something like that, then you'll probably have it left in stereo. So it can have different instruments sometimes, right? Songs are mixed to have different outputs for each channel, left or right. But if you're setting this up in a lobby, coffee shop, something like that, where people are just walking around, you don't want it in stereo. It can sound really weird actually. So you want to change that to mono, meaning that each of these speakers are actually sending out exactly the same audio. And that's what we want. You can, of course, if you were in stereo, you could adjust the balance, right? Only, more of the left, more of the right. But if you're in mono, it's just mono. Persistent dashboard, I would say on. That's just to keep on the actual PowerAmp, keep showing what's playing. And you can from here adjust the screen brightness of the PowerAmp and the LED brightness and the LED color ring. And I'll also show you here in a minute. You can also do that on the PowerAmp itself, so I'll show you that. Now we can also locate and restart it and remove it. So remove removes it from your whole account. It'll be fresh. Restarts, reboots it. It's kind of like on your PC. Something's wrong, probably just want to restart it. So locate is cool that it doesn't just flash, and I'll show you that on the screen here, what it looks like when you click locate, but it also gives a sound. Okay, so this is maybe a good way to understand which speakers, if you have multiple of these PowerAmps, which one is connected to. So you can click stop locating, and interesting is it started playing the music that was previously playing. Right, so those are the individual settings if you have one PowerAmp. But, let's say, hey, I have a restaurant or something and I need like 10 speakers. Ideally, there's ways to daisy chain parallel series speakers and stuff off of one amp. But let's say ideally you get, you want another PowerAmp, another amp to drive 2 more speakers. So let's go back and you'll see I have a second amp here. So PowerAmp 1. And now let's make this make a little bit more sense. So let's say this is the lobby. Let's say this is the east side. And then this one, same thing, is lobby west or something. So we have two power amps and they're both designed for the lobby. So now we want them to play the same thing at once. So we go to zones here and we want to create a zone. So let's just call the zone lobby. Now stream broadcasting means that kind of which names pop up on the devices you're trying to stream from. So from Spotify or AirPlay. If I say zone only, that means only this name lobby is going to pop up. And the only option is to stream to all these power amps that are in the zone, which we can select right here. Or we do zone and devices. So what that means is when you select to AirPlay, you'll see not only lobby, but you'll see lobby east and lobby west. So you can separate it. So most likely you'll just want zone only. So let's create that zone. And you probably notice it says that for the best or optimal synchronization, we want them connected with Ethernet cables. Okay, so that's where this comes in. So ideally, right, you grab, I would say typically, I would probably use port 1, for example. Port 1 to your network switch. And then from there, you can go port 2 to your like kind of daisy chain, right? The other power amp could just sit right on top or next to it and just go from 2 to the other Ethernet port that way. And that way you have both of them wired into your network and it's just going to be a little bit more, I guess, resilient. And so now, like before, we can control both of the amps obviously at the same time. And if you click here in the volume, we also want a volume limit. So you can see each of these are actually separately set to have a volume limit, and you will go into each device to control that. So the other one was already preset. So let's say lobby west, I want to adjust that power amp. Maybe had different speakers there and they can handle less. So I'm gonna put that at 40%. And now if I go to volume here for the zone, you'll see individual amps that have their volume limits, then a total volume for the whole zone, and then individual volume as well here. But really, I mean, that's not how you should be. The point of a zone is that you can adjust it all right here, all at once. Okay, so let's close that. And we basically saw, right, you can change the stream broadcasting again. Then device synchronization is just so all the kind of visual settings of it, the color and stuff, brightness are all the same between both power amps. So I have that on. Or else you can, you can make them different color if you want to, but kind of makes sense to match them by zone. And you can, for both of them or all the amps in your zone, you can adjust, color, all that good stuff, and that dashboard as well. Okay, there's one more thing in the app, and that's right here atop the gear icon. So let's click there. Now, I don't use Soundtrack that they recently added here or Spotify, but this kind of will give you some more details on how to set it up and pair it. Now what we saw, these are kind of what we call global settings, what we saw before, right? Volume limit, you can also adjust that here. So these are kind of some unique features here. Alarm, right? So I have one here set up, but you can add a new one. There's certain sounds, which device. So it's by device. You can set a time. You can repeat it at certain times if you want to. And there's a couple, so kind of 5 options to choose from. So here's a cosmic bounce. You can set the volume. Let's do test. Okay, so that's an alarm there. Okay. And you can choose how long to run it or non-stop, no limit. Another kind of unique feature here is this quiet hour. So I now have set it up from 5 to 6:40 or whatever, right? You can, let's say, again, maybe example, you're running this in the coffee shop. You have something streaming to it non-stop. Maybe you don't have an easy way or people forget to turn it on and off, kind of the background music. So you can just set the schedule here, essentially for it to go quiet. So let's say you close your shop 7 and next day it opens at 6 a.m. or something. Okay, and every single day, or you can customize it by day. And you could, I guess you have to set it per device right now. So it will be nice to set that per zone. And then wind down is how long it takes to kind of, is going to gradually, if you have volume at 50%, it's going to gradually reduce it all the way to 0. So you can do that maybe a little quicker. So that if you have someone working, they kind of know it's shutting down. I think if it's 0 minutes, it might be a little weird. They might think maybe something broke. So maybe 5 minutes and save that, okay? And then any updates, of course, it'll notify you in the app. Also on the amp itself, you'll see updates. So you can manually check here if you need to. But we're all updated. Next, let's look at what we can actually do with this touchscreen here, because that's kind of the main kind of the standout feature of the PowerAmp for sure. But before we do so, if you found this video helpful so far, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and let's go on. One of the main features of this PowerAmp is this screen right here, this color screen, 1.43 inches diameter, and it is a touch screen. So first thing here, you can tell right away, it gives you the name. So Lobby East, that's what we named the PowerAmp. And right under it says Lobby, that was the zone, right? Because there's two of these PowerAmps in the zone. And at the top, we see it's connected to Wi-Fi. And in fact, if we plug this in, plug in the Ethernet cable, then in a couple seconds, there it is. It shows us that RJ45, and if we tap on it, let's go back. It just gives us an IP address, okay? Now if I unplug it, it's telling me no Ethernet connection, which is fine because it should jump. Just close that. And there it is. It's already showing me it's back on Wi-Fi. If I click back, we see the Wi-Fi icon again. So let's jump back into settings by tapping at the top there. And you can scroll, right? It's a touch screen. You can scroll across the menu. You can adjust the screen brightness right here. And it's a super sharp screen, to be honest. You cannot tell the pixels apart. And then the LED ring brightness, so what they're calling this the ring, so you can adjust that. And the LED color, so I set it to kind of my Apex One blue, but you can do whatever you want to here. The only thing is, I wish, this dial, rotary dial here, or ring, it is like a nice aluminum knurled, as opposed to all this is like it is a nice hard plastic, and then this is some kind of metal. But as you can see, even when I'm in the menu, it's always set to adjust the volume. It would have been nice if, for example, it's kind of menu aware, where I can use this dial to adjust the color hue, for example. Anyways, and then there's here, you can restart the device. So let's click back. And then you can tap the bottom here to see what's playing. And of course, adjust the volume. You can pause, you can click next track, previous track. I'm sure this works. This is on AirPlay, but I'm sure it's similar with Spotify. And then you can swipe here to change your input source. So you have the three kind of sort of physical input sources that you can change between streamings like your Spotify, AirPlay, and I forgot the third one they added recently. And then HDMI eARC, as we talked about, you can select that, and that's when you have that HDMI cable plugged in, when you're kind of using it for a home TV kind of speaker setup. And you saw right away when I changed source, so let's go back, let's go line in, it automatically kind of remembers where your volume was for that input source, which is a nice touch. Right, and line in is those two RCA inputs, left and right, for something like it shows here, like a vinyl record player, or even your computer, whatever, you can plug in directly as well. So let's go back to streaming. Yeah, there it goes. So you can click the next track, and you can tell that, see, it matches the album artwork as well, the color, sort of like on your, let's say on your iPhone, for example, it matches the background with the album artwork. So a nice touch, but you can swipe down from the top here to get back to your main screen. Now, who is this for? So first of all, in general, just amps. If you're buying an amp and passive speakers, it's kind of like separating a router and a wireless access point, or a switch from your router or gateway. So you have more control over each of the kind of components of your system. So now your speaker, for example, it doesn't have a built-in amp. It's not tied down to the amp. You can upgrade things separately. You have more kind of options in when you decide what kind of speakers to get. It's also, as you saw, very simple to run a couple thin wires to a passive speaker, as opposed to like a 3-wire cable for power to the speaker and things like that. So depending on your situation, it might be easier to install. And again, upgrade, select different options. If you're looking for a home or home office kind of setup, you need to pick up obviously the PowerAmp itself. So that's about $600, and then most likely at least 2 passive speakers. And they can run you, most likely at least $100, $200. So now you're looking at $800, could be $1,000. And if you're looking to add this to, let's say, your home kind of theater setup, and you just need 2 speakers, right, left and right, you probably want to add a sub now, so that's an additional cost. And that probably puts you now at $1,000 for sure, if you want some good speakers. But again, all the different components are upgradable, which is nice. So yeah, I think also though, for example, I run an Apple HomePods and an Apple TV, so that's a little different with my TV. You have a little bit more options. I mean, you have the Siri, which is not the best, but you do have Siri and the HomePods, and you can still get nice stereo, and it's wireless, and it all works. You know, the Apple TV hooks up with the eARC to your TV, and that works pretty well. But it does have to pass everything through the Apple TV. But if you want just anything off of your TV to work with your nicer speakers, then the PowerAmp can be a great way to go. And the final situation for home use in particular is if you want to, send different kind of inputs to your speakers. So what's nice is that you can have this hooked up to your TV, for example, but then also, right, it has the streaming, Spotify, AirPlay, so you can also send sound that way. Or you can plug in like a record player like we saw to the PowerAmp and switch between those. So that's kind of a nice feature that you have one PowerAmp or one amp. Sorry, I keep calling it PowerAmp, but it's an amp. This is the UniFi PowerAmp, and they can do multiple sources. For business use now, this PowerAmp is good for, I would say, like a restaurant, coffee shop. And you can have something like this, two shelf-mounted, wall-mounted speakers like this. Or you probably saw in a lot of restaurants, lobbies maybe kind of built into the wall or the ceiling, those type of speakers. Nearly all of them are passive speakers, so you will need a speaker amplifier like the UniFi PowerAmp. And in a similar kind of other business situation, you can have this powering several speakers or multiple amps for like a lobby. You can think of maybe a church foyer, right? People waiting in general, like a waiting area. So like a med spa, a dentist office, which in fact is where I'm going to be deploying a couple of these power amps for the whole dental office. So if you want to see that, you can go ahead and click on the video that'll be right here. And you can see how that install goes, how to set that up. Or you can click this video down below if you want to see a complete UniFi setup, step by step for a small office. Otherwise, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.